Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Hopefully the audio's better. I'm going to check it. What I did is since this smartphone has a USB Type-C port, is I got myself a little adapter and I can plug my USB mic right into it. I'm having a hard time telling if the audio really sounds any different with or without it. So I'm going to do a few more tests. I just got this thing, haven't even been home with it yet. And I'm sorry I'm a little in the dark side. I've joined the dark side. There were some people over in the park the other way, so I went over and sought some asylum under the pavilion. So it looks like I go this way. It's a little nice, but I love the scenery. This is just a wonderful park. I don't remember the name of this park, but it's right on right off of Oakwood Drive here in State College. And let me fix my collar for you OCD folks. All right. Welcome back to Switch to Linux, and we are going to continue our discussion on simplicity. And I had two completely different things I wanted to talk about today, and so I'm just having a hard time. Like, which one do I want to do? Do I want to go with the original plan, or do I want to do the plan that inspired me today? And actually, I think that the other plan is also still in my works anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and proceed with the one I wanted to talk about, and that is saving money by simplifying your utilities. And this is an interesting one as you think of, but as you convert more and more things into minimalism, you look into more ways to save resources and things. Now, as I said before, I'm not a crazy tree hugger that's just like, ooh, we all need to do away with all the carbon stuff. Just an FYI, the carbon waste in producing a solar panel is really high. So utilizing the solar panel may be clean, but the manufacturing is the waste of hundreds of thousands of cars. Not to say I think solar is bad. Actually, I think solar is a really good thing, and as we study the technology, we'll get better and better at it. But we're not going to talk about that because most people don't have access to solar. What we are going to talk about, though, is I'm going to focus a lot on electricity, but we're going to touch on some of the other utilities as well. So thinking about the utilities that you pay for as you are living your life, the utilities you generally would have electricity, you might have gas, you might have water. Let's see, are there more than that? I think those are your basic utilities, and maybe let's go ahead and throw things on there like cable subscriptions and subscription services, things like that. Really, well, a lot of the companies, let's focus first on the subscription stuff because I talk about that in a lot of places. Let's just get that out of the way really quick. So as you talk about the subscription services, a lot of companies sell the subscription services as a means to simplify your life. Pay us this little bit of money. You don't have to worry about reordering and things. And I'll tell you that actually complicates things because you don't know what's being charged where, how much it is, and all that in most cases of times. Now, there are certainly instances where that can simplify your life. My point is you need to weigh those very carefully. There are times they help, there are times they do not. And so that's one of those things that you need to think about. I'm still looking at the lighting situation here and wondering if there's anything I can do differently. Ooh, other than shining an iPhone in my face. Oh well, we'll deal with the light. All right, so in terms of all that, so that's kind of your subscription services. Weigh those, carefully think on those, and decide are those really things that are important for you in your life. I wager for the most part no, because although it seems a little bit of a misnomer, when you are handling things manual in your life, you tend to have a whole lot more control over them, and having the control actually means that things are more simplified in the long run. Now let's talk about the, maybe not the subscription services as much, but maybe your things like your internet bill, your cell phone bill, your cable bill, those types of things, all right? So take an annual stock of those. Look everything over and decide if what you're paying is worth what you're paying for and is that the right thing for your needs. So for example, I am self-employed and I am at a home office about 90% of my time. And so I am perpetually connected to wireless, and so I have the absolute lowest data plan I can possibly get. And actually I'm irritated because last summer I took a trip and I hit that threshold and I was like, I'm okay paying, $10 for 1 month to go over the limit. But what they didn't tell me, and I asked them about a bunch of things before I went on the trip, what they didn't tell you is that if you tether your internet off your phone, they tier that back to like a 1x speed service. And so I actually couldn't get any work done. So I had to call them up from the road and say, okay, just up the plan to the next amountage up. Well, what I did not know, what they were in the process of doing, is changing the plans around. They were getting rid of that lowest tier, which really irritated me because I'm now forced to have a tier of minutes that is way more than I need. And then, of course, they decide they're going to add, now you can roll over your unused minutes. I have so much unused data, I wish I could sell it back to the company. Because it's crazy. It's crazy. I use about half a gig of data between two smartphones. I use half a gig of data a month because I'm on Wi-Fi connections constantly, at my home office. I just don't get out there and use the internet a lot. In those times that I do, those weeks, or maybe I might take a road trip for a week, in 1 week's time, I still don't really come close to it. And so you have to weigh out. A lot of people just go and like, oh, I'll just go ahead and get this unlimited plan because, hey, I don't have to worry about it. Well, the reality is you do have to worry about it. You can go onto your phone and go onto your bill, particularly with your cell phone bill. You can go onto your cell phone bill and you can decide, hey, it looks better without the hat. Let's do that. You can decide, you can look over your bill and see how much data you're using. Well, if you're on an unlimited data plan and you're only using 1 gig of data a month, cut down to a 1 gig of data plan. You're going to save yourself quite a bit of money for the month. There's no point in giving the extra money to your cell phone company if you're not truly using that data. And so that's one of those things to keep in mind. The second thing regarding that, look at your subscription services, so things like your Netflix. Now, we already touched on subscription services earlier, but look at the quantities of them you have. Do you really need Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu and Comcast and DirecTVs and all these other guys, HBO On Demand? Do you really need all these? Ask yourself that fundamental question. You might say, well, there's a show or two I really want to watch on this one, and that one, yeah, it's nice having it. Figure out, are you willing to make a sacrifice to save yourself quite a bit of money? Because even if it's only $10 a month, that's $120 a year. And for the average American, $120 a year can go into, you can drop that on a lot of other things and do well. And that's one of those things to keep in mind. The next thing we want to look at is your basic utilities. This is the one where I have kind of become an expert in the electric bills. Not so much in other things. So a friend of mine's kind of an expert in the water bill. He actually measures it and takes 5-gallon showers. Now he's in a town where there are water restrictions, and so they have to be good at that. Although he does criticize the people, he's in California, he does criticize the people down in LA with all of the huge massive mansions perpetually manicuring their lawn. Why are those guys not under water restriction? They're Hollywood stars, that's why. Us common folk, we have to regulate our water. It's kind of like that whole, is it Al Gore, I think, save power. 1 month of his electric bill is more than I pay for electricity in 5 years. That's crazy. It's kind of like Barack and Michelle Obama took separate Boeing 747s all the way across the country to go to the environmental summit. Hypocrisy much? But hey, at least they took the environment seriously. There, see, I'm an equal opportunity offender. All right, and so with that being said, ways to reduce water. What am I doing to look at ways to reducing water? Well, one of the ways that I'm looking at reducing water is I've switched most of the week. I actually use an electric razor instead of a traditional razor. And the reason I do that, now you think that, how's that, that's more stuff. How is that not consistent with minimalism? Well, because minimalism isn't just getting rid of all your stuff. Minimalism is taking very conscious thought of the stuff you have. That's the difference. And so I looked everything over and I said, if I have this electric razor that I plug in for a few hours twice a month. But it's a dry shaver, so I don't have to wet myself. I don't have to be shaving with water on. I don't have to fill up the sink full of water. I'm conserving a lot of water in using an electric razor. And in reality, as a test, I actually bought that razor as a test at Ollie's. It cost me $10. I mean, it cost me more money to buy a pack of traditional razors. So in reality, that saved me a lot of money in that I'm not buying nearly as many razors, and it saves me a lot of water, although there's that small electricity cost. But in reality, it's not much worth the fuss over charging an electric razor twice a month. That's not a whole lot. Other water things, I'm still looking into how I can conserve more water. That's something I need to focus on. It's something I'm not all that good at, but it's on the radar to look at. I'm going to talk now, of course, natural gas. Usually that's either stoves or water heaters or furnaces, if those apply to you. Now, I am in an unfortunate situation right now where my water heater and my furnace are all electric on my meter. That's a little different from the last apartment I was in, where the electric was on my meter, but the water was not. And that actually saved me a lot with that apartment complex. This current one, I paid quite a bit more because the water heater is in there. Regarding those, usually natural gas stove, not a real big deal, but the biggest thing you can do with that is turn the water heater down ever so slightly. And you just have to kind of weigh that. There's times you might need to raise it up, there's times you might need to cut it back down a little bit. But really cutting the water heater down can save a ton if you have a water heater. Basic stuff like that. Now, as far as electricity, I'm going to spend some time on this one because this is an important topic. First of all, do you realize that for the average consumer, up to 20% of their electric bill is what is called ghost power? Ghost power means it's power that you're not actively using because it's just your TV is plugged in. And of course, with these new smart devices, not only are they plugged in, but they're perpetually on and listening. And so they're always plugged in. They're always on at some level. Maybe in my case, I had my sound system that I have has the little red indicator light. That actually draws power when you're using it. The big one for me was the coffee pot. My coffee pot is a 900-watt coffee pot, and that's pretty average. And I did the calculation that with 900-watt coffee pot, and I had it on for literally an average of 5 hours in a day. And I think that's pretty common for somebody. And I don't drink a ton of coffee, unbeknownst to some people think I do. I don't. I make two regular thermoses a day. That's it, like not thermoses, but two travel mugs a day is what I drink in coffee. I don't drink any more than that usually. So if I had 900 watts though, which is 0.9 kilowatts times 5 hours, and I did that 7 days a week, or approximately 30 days a month, 135 kilowatt hours. Now, if you're not familiar with how electricity works, you pay for the kilowatt hour. Now, some places, like I'm in Pennsylvania, there's no base fee for the electricity, and that means that the kilowatt hour rate is higher. I also lived in a state before that had a base level and the kilowatt per hour was lower. You need to decide for your state what situation you find yourself in. But for me, whatever power I consume, I'm paying for in the bill. And so what happens is you end up paying a certain amount, and it usually boils down to a few cents per kilowatt hour, or maybe at a few fractions of cents per kilowatt hour. So if I'm paying, just say I'm paying 6 cents per kilowatt hour, that coffee pot could possibly cost me $8 in a month to run. So what I did is I pulled the coffee pot off and I went with a French press because there's no power in a French press. All I have to do is heat the water. Now you say, well, now you have to heat the water. So then I actually engaged in a study. What takes more power? Does it take more power to boil it on the stove on the kettle or to cook it in the microwave? So I did that search. I did a bunch of internet research, and I found neither option. The most efficient way of heating water is actually with an electric kettle. And so I got an electric kettle, which is a 1,500-watt kettle. So it's like, whoa, that's higher than the coffee pot. Yes, but it is on for less than 5 minutes a day. Unless I make tea in the evening, in which case it might see 7 minutes of use in the day. So 7 minutes times your 1500 kilowatts is a tiny fraction compared to a 900 kilowatt, a 900 watt or a 0.9 kilowatt coffee pot running for 5 hours every day. And so what do I do then? Well, I make the amount in the French press, and then I pour one into a regular coffee cup. I drink that, and the other one goes into a thermos, and it stays warm most of the day. And then halfway through the day, if there's coffee left, I'll warm it up in the microwave for a minute. And so by doing a lot of these little things, you can learn how to cut your power back. So let's go back and revisit that concept of the ghost power. Ghost electricity is when you leave your cell phone charger plugged in for convenience. It burns power. When you leave your TV, your stereo, all those types of things plugged in, it takes more power. When you leave your coffee pot plugged in or your microwave plugged in, it takes more power. All of this stuff takes more power, and that's kind of that thing to think of. And so what I have done personally in my life is the first thing that I do is every appliance that doesn't need to stay plugged in gets unplugged. So I looked at my media center. I have a very nice Raspberry Pi media center, but it occurred to me, I listen to music once in the morning, and some weeks I will watch a movie in the evening. The rest of the time, I'm in the office and all the media is done over there. So what I do now is not only does all that get turned off when I'm not using it, but it gets manually unplugged. So I have all of those things, the TV, the Raspberry Pi, the speaker system, anything else related to that kind of stuff. I think there's a DVD player over there as well. All of that kind of stuff. It's all in one power strip, and then when I'm done using it, I simply pull it out. I pull the plug on it because that actually saves a ton of electricity, especially if you do that routinely every day. So what do I keep plugged in? Well, in the kitchen, obviously the refrigerator, because that stays run in. The stove stays plugged in. That's one of the ones that does have a lot of kill power inside of it, so it doesn't consume much. Or if anything at all, to keep that plugged in. I keep the microwave plugged in simply because that's my clock. I have a toaster oven. I don't keep that plugged in. I have a few other odds and ends accessories. I don't keep those plugged in either. How much time does it take if I need to use the toaster oven to reach down, plug in the toaster oven, and that's it? It doesn't take any time at all. And so that's what I do. In terms of the Office. That's the one that's the hard one, because in reality, most of the things kind of need to stay plugged in. In reality, what really needs to stay plugged in, and maybe I need to do this, I actually have the wires around that I'm actually going to be making some adjustments to things in my network. So maybe I'll actually do this. What I need to do is I need to figure out how I can set things up so I can turn off all of the power strips except what runs my NAS, my modem, and my router. If I can figure out how to do that, then I can actually cut back even a whole lot more ghost power. That's actually going to be a project I do tonight, I think. I think I'm going to figure that out, because I think I can do that without a problem. So I think we're going to work on that. So with that, figure out those things that you can keep unplugged. Don't keep anything plugged in that doesn't have to stay plugged in. On top of it actually can be a fire hazard. If you got something back behind somewhere and it's perpetually plugged in and you don't realize that it could actually have taken itself out or part way, and things like that, it's always a good thing to check your outlets every now and again. So do things like that. And what ends up happening, let's move on to something else. Here's a neat one. Look in your bathroom. A lot of our bathrooms, especially in this modern world, they have these vanities with a whole bake of lights. Do you really need a whole bake of lights in the bathroom? Well, some instances you might need more, some instances you might need less. So your average bulbs in the bathroom are generally, at least every one I've gotten into, are like 40-watt bulbs, and there's a panel. Like right now, I have 2 bathrooms in the apartment, and there's 4 outlets, and each outlet has a 40-watt bulb plugged in. That's 160 watts. So what did I do? Very simple. I actually reached up and I unscrewed 3 of the 4 light bulbs. And so there's one 40-watt light bulb running. Now, what you could do is I could take all those out and replace them with low wattage bulbs. I do that on the lamps, the things that I take from apartment to apartment. And I do have a bunch of those bulbs that when I move into a new apartment, I will swap out the most frequently used light bulbs that I have. I will swap those out with high efficiency bulbs, and then I'll just save the old ones. And then when I move out of the apartment, I'll put the old bulbs right back in because I'm not going to throw them out or anything. So look at how you can do things like that. And then what happens is if you cut the lights in your bathroom in half, if you are keeping your devices unplugged, if you switch from a traditional coffee pot, a percolation coffee pot, to a French press, which, by the way, way better coffee, I save the coffee pot because I'm like, what if I don't like this? I haven't even thought of looking back. I love the French press so much more. It's much better coffee. I did all that kind of stuff, and it's amazing the amount of money that you save. And in reality, your life is simpler because then you start to think about what devices do I use? What devices do I not use? What's the frequency? Do I have to keep these things plugged in or not? Which, by the way, you could actually plug them into a power strip and just flip the switch on the power strip. You could do that too. I think that's just as efficient. I just unplug them because it's not a real big deal. So that's kind of those things to think about. So what are your ideas to save on your utilities, particularly your waterways? I'd be interested to hear how you're saving on water because that's one I'm actively researching. This is a longer simplify your life, but I really wanted to get in and talk about the utilities and what I'm doing to cut things back. And just once you do that, man, just things get simpler. Your power bills will start going down. You'll save a little bit more money. You'll be more intentional about what you're using, what's plugged in, what's not plugged in. If for crying out loud, if you got a microwave and an oven in your kitchen and they're perpetually plugged in and they both have a clock, turn off the display on one of them. I did that in my old house out west. It's like it had the built-in microwave, the built-in stove. Both of them had a clock right in the same location. Like, yeah, so I look over there and there's two clocks. Well, that's pretty pointless. So I turned off the display on the microwave because it was brighter and it was smaller. So that was what I did. So let me know the things that you are doing to cut things back. That'd be great. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support us at Switch to Linux, check out switchtolinux.com/support. You can learn all about that. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy simplifying your life and switching to Linux.